Hey, everybody, this is Karen Jackson, and welcome to Chat with Sandy and Karen. My co host is.
Sandy.
and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Joe Sanfelippo, and he's going to talk about leadership.
Hey,
Welcome.
well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun to chat, before we got on, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation about how we can lead, what we can do to help people lead, and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, I think what we want to hear about is all your knowledge, your information to those who want to lead as well. So I think you've got some great knowledge, inspiration for a lot of new leaders that are coming along.
Well,
So
I hope
thank you.
so. Yeah, like we're trying. Leadership is so hard, and I think that the thing that we miss on a lot is that everybody has the ability to lead, but are we giving them the opportunity to lead? And like I find it almost comical that in schools we tell people that we're trying to create the leaders of tomorrow, yet we don't let them leave, and we don't let them lead until they leave. Like, so what are we really doing? I mean, so I think the idea that we have to try to keep in mind from a leadership perspective is, creating leaders means creating capacity to lead. And I don't know if that happens a lot in terms of everywhere we go. So that's a big deal in terms of how we want to kind of move people forward.
Mm.
Absolutely. So, so let's start with lead from where you are.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
It offers a down-to-earth kind of advice. And when I was reading it, I was thinking like, this is almost stream of consciousness where you just follow this logical problem and then the solution that you give, that your experience, but then also the questions. I like how you ask questions at the end.
Oh, thank you. And so the thing about lead from where you are that was really exciting. I've been working on this book for like literally, I want to say like 5 years, and I just like left it alone. I started writing it in like 2017, maybe 2018, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna write it. And I talked to the publisher, and I said, he asked me to write with him, and I said, yeah, absolutely, no problem. And I started writing, and I'm like, I really don't have anything to say. I mean, everything's feels like it's been said. And so I didn't want to write anything that everybody else is doing. And so I kind of put it off to the side. And then I started doing these little leadership walks, and like walks from I live across the street from school. And I literally would just walk to school and talk about leadership. And I liked doing that better than I liked writing. So I just kept doing those. Then the next thing I know, I'm like, about a year and a half ago, I thought that actually is probably the book. I mean, if that's what it is, that's probably the book. So why don't I just take the ones that were the most popular, that people really resonated with, and dive deeper into the ones that people liked the most and felt like they hit home the most, and talk about how we can do that on a very regular basis. And then and that made it a lot easier to write, to be really honest, because I'm not a writer. I just, I do have 4 books, but I don't consider myself to be a writer. I kind of write like I talk, and if people like it, we'll go with it, and if not, we'll just kind of keep putting it out there. But yeah, so I think that it's been fun to the book is essentially broken down into why we do, why we lead, what that looks like, and how to do it. So really, if you come back to your purpose and why you do what you do, and everything kind of focuses around there, the what is the logistics of, of what's happening in the space, and the how is how can you get it done moving forward. And it's really, that's as simplistic as it is. We break it down to 3 parts. It's really about how can we be more intentional about the leadership, how can we make connections, and how we can provide direction. And that's, it's not rocket science at all. It's just consistent growth across the board. And I think a lot of the lessons in Lead from Where You Are kind of stem from the idea that I did a ton of stuff wrong when I started leading, just like a ton. Like, I was awful. So if there was a way to help people not be awful, then they can start at a better place than I started at, and hopefully grow astronomically from the spot that they're in.
But to be honest, I think from my experience, no one is perfect, right?
Yeah.
So I think leading or teaching, everything, you're learning every day.
Right. Absolutely. And you have to be willing to take a step back and take a look at it, because the thing that happens with us a lot as leaders is a lot of leaders are checklist people. Like they get stuff on a checklist, they check it off as they go along, they get to the next thing because they're doers. They want to get something done. They want to get something accomplished. They want to catch it off the list. And when you're always in checklist mentality and you're go, 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 do, you never take a step back from that checklist to understand what's actually on that checklist, because there's always something else on it. So if you never take a step back to realize the impact of everything on the checklist, you just keep going and you never find joy in it. Because let's think about your checklist. Like on a checklist, there's how many fun things are on your checklist? Nothing. It's all like get the report done. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do that. Like smile's not on your checklist. Like laugh isn't on your checklist. So if you take a step back and take a look at like what that checklist provides to the people that you serve, you're much more willing to lean into that work.
Do you ever put those things on your checklist?
Yeah, I do now. I didn't before. So there are two types of checklist people in the world, right? There are checklist people that write stuff down on a list and check it off as they go along. Then there are checklist people like me that write stuff down on a list and check it off as I go along. But if I do something that's not on the list, I'm going to write it on the list. I'm going to check it off. I should get credit for that. I did it.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. There's a record, even if it's on a post that you throw away. There's a record.
Doesn't matter. You put it on that list. And
I bet your list then just grows.
Yeah, you're darn right it does. Because a lot of stuff that you do is not even on the list. So I don't know. You got to be in a spot where you can actually put smile and laugh. And the thing about the checklist that's really important, we talk about it in the book too. The thing about the list is we talk about this whole mentality of recognize, acknowledge, and extend, right? So what are you doing to recognize the greatness that happens around you? How are you acknowledging that? And then how do you extend that conversation to somebody who wasn't there? So the checklist comes in that recognized mentality, because if you start your day with a checklist that doesn't bring you any joy, that puts you in the wrong mindset to see great things, then you're never going to see the great things. And I think about like how when I came to school a lot, I'd come to school, I'd turn my computer on, I'd get some seltzer water, I'd open my email, I'd respond to emails, I'd sign some forms, and then I'd get into classrooms. Well, by the time that I got into classrooms, I don't know if it's like this there, but there aren't a ton of people emailing the superintendent of schools at 6 o'clock in the morning with great things to say about the school, right? So all of a sudden, I'm in the wrong mindset to see great things because I'm responding to people who are ticked off about something that happened 18 months ago that they can't get over. So we got to be really cognizant about how are we or what are we doing to put ourselves in the right mindset. So think about what you're doing to start your day. What are the first 5 things that you do to start your day? And do any of those things bring you joy? And if they don't, we got to figure out a way to help ourselves out, because if you can't recognize the greatness that's happening around you, then you walk from place to place, not knowing if you're having any impact or if there's any impact going on, because you're always trying to get to the next thing. So that's the whole recognized piece of it, is getting yourself in the right mindset. The second piece is being willing to acknowledge the work, right? So instead of walking through a hallway and seeing that, you recognize that in second grade, some really cool things are happening with the teacher and the kid in second grade, right? You can, instead of walking past it, how often do you go into the room and say, I just saw this and it was amazing. Thank you so much. It just made me feel something. I thought it was really cool. I just wanted to say thank you. So now you've got recognized and acknowledged, but the gold is in the third piece of it. The gold is how we change the conversation. The gold is in the third piece, which changes the way that we talk about schools. And that is when you extend a conversation to somebody who wasn't there. When you do that, now you've created momentum outside of the event, right? So if I walk down the hall, I recognize, because I'm in the right mindset to recognize. I go into the second grade classroom, tell a second grade teacher she's doing incredible things because this is what I saw. But when you extend a conversation to the 8th grade science teacher who has no idea what's going on in second grade, and you tell the 8th grade science teacher about the great things happening in second grade, what inevitably happens is the 8th grade science teacher is going to walk to the 2nd grade classroom and tell a 2nd grade teacher that they heard great things about him because at some point somebody did it for him and it felt good. And we all want to work and live in a place where we feel good about the work that we do. So if we can create that, now we've created an opportunity for people to really, impact beyond the event in which the event takes place.
It's really good you say that. And I think acknowledgement is so needed. We are living in a world, and it is a shame to say, especially in education, where there's more competition with each other rather than a pat on the back saying, oh, we're co-workers, we're a team, we should work together. But I've heard you did a great thing. Can you help me? Or can you advise me? And I think there's not much of that going on at the moment. It's very much like, why has that person got more acknowledgement? Or why is that person being praised by the superior? What's happening? So it's good you said that. So when our listeners are listening, I hope they can take that in. It's, it is that time where we need each other and support each other.
Right. And nobody else is doing it. Right. I mean, I think that we sometimes are our worst enemies in schools because, we feel like we're in competition with the person next door. At the same time, we also don't feel like we're in a situation where we can actually grow and learn together unless we feel vulnerable enough to have a conversation. And I think we knock each other. Okay, so 2 things. The first thing is I think we knock each other down, and that hurts a lot because we're afraid to say something. So let's say you have a 5th grade teacher that's doing incredible things, right? And the 5th grade teacher says, I have this really great idea. It's going to be a great idea. Kids are going to love it. And they go next door to their colleague to tell the next 5th grade teacher about the great idea they have. I got this great idea. I got this great idea. It's a great idea. And the other teacher's like, don't do that. Because if you do that, then I'm going to have to do that. And I don't want to do that. So don't do that. Right? So then one of 2 things happens. Either the person goes back to their room and does it and doesn't tell anybody about it, or they don't do it because they're afraid of what their colleague is going to say about it. And the reason that their colleague says it has nothing to do with the activity. It has everything to do with they did a new activity at some point that nobody acknowledged, and they don't want to change it because they like it. They didn't tell anybody about it. So they don't want to change what they're doing. So how can we figure out ways to kind of build momentum in terms of what that work really looks like? And that can be really difficult if you don't develop some trust in the organization. And we've developed trust here through just creating stories. Like when people know your story and you know theirs, it makes everything a little bit easier to have conversations. Think about how many times people go next door to their colleague and they complain about something, or they talk about a schedule change, or they wonder about what's going on, right? Versus how many times do they go next door and say, I just taught a really good lesson and I'm really, really proud of it. They don't do that because they're afraid of what their colleague is going to say about it. They're like, well, yeah, that's what we do, right? Well, why don't we celebrate that work? Because when it comes down to it, like, you're changing the lives of kids. That's what you're doing. Changing the trajectory of families. That's not something that should be just pushed off to the side. No, but it is.
That's awesome. And unfortunately, what we do acknowledge is the negative sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what we spread around instead of the positive, which builds people up and builds the culture. Right. So we tend to spread the negative more than the positive.
Here's the problem. The problem is we're the ones that are doing it. Like, we're feeding into everybody's narrative about what school is. Then I tell people all the time, nobody changes the way they talk about us until we change the way that we talk about us. That's the first thing, right? If we don't do it internally, what are we really doing? But think about all the, okay, so here's the thing. So a couple of years ago, I was outside playing baseball with my nephew, Patrick. He was 4 years old at the time, right? He's up to bat. We pitch him the wiffle ball. He hits the wiffle ball, goes to first base, laughing the whole time. Goes to second base, laughing the whole time. Goes to third base, everybody's laughing. They're like, go home, buddy, go home. He goes home, puts his foot on home plate, puts his hands in the air, and he says, yay me, right? Here's the thing. The kid ran around some bases, and he said, yay me. Well, people changing the lives of kids should be able to say the same thing without wondering what people are going to say. Here's what happened. Like, you think about this. what didn't happen in that scenario is the guy next door that lives next door didn't look over the fence and start yelling at my family about how it's not that big a deal, or it's not, right? Is that right? Or like, yeah, it's not that big a deal. You're not doing it. It's only a wiffle ball bat. You're not playing any defense. I could do it better. Like all that stuff. But this is what they do. They look over our fence into our schools and they tell us how good or bad we are based on what happened to them 25 years ago when they didn't get a second chicken sandwich at lunch. They got put against the wall at recess. They got a grade they didn't deserve, or the coach didn't play them. And that's what they talk about all the time. It's maddening. It's maddening.
Yeah.
So, a lot of things you've said there. I think you like talking, right?
I love it. Get it.
Big thing, because you talk about a lot of education. How did you lead education during the pandemic?
Well, I think Well, the first thing we did. So when the pandemic hit and we had to move to remote learning, we told our staff that two things are going to come to the surface right away. The first thing is, how well do we know our kids? And the second thing is, what are we willing to do for them when they're not here? And those are going to be on display all the time. Because if we didn't know our kids, we didn't know what they were going to need. We didn't know if they had connection. We didn't know if they had food. We didn't know if they had the right materials. We didn't know if they had all that stuff, right? If we knew our kids, we'd know how we can move them forward. So the first thing that we did in the first 3 days, we told our staff that there will be no academic anything in the first 3 days. Nothing. You will not assign anything. You will not give a test. You will not give a survey. Nothing. You will call every single person on your class list. You will check in with them multiple times just to make sure that they're okay. Make sure that they have what they need. If they don't have what they need, we're going to spend the first 3 days making sure that they have what they need. If that's hotspots for connectivity, if that's Chromebooks, if that's iPads, if that's whatever it is, if it's food, whatever it is, we're going to find out what it is and make sure that they have that. So that was during the first couple of days. The second piece is what are we willing to do for them when they're not here? Is how do we make sure that we're meeting kids where they're at and understanding that you're not going to be able to teach all the content that you wanted to teach or that you could teach in the moment with kids in the room. So how can we make sure that the content that you're delivering is, first of all, aligned, but second of all, that it's core to what we need to have moving forward, and there's not the additional pieces. And it's not that the additional pieces are a really interesting question, because everybody believes that what they teach has incredible value, and I don't deny that
every bit,
right? but nobody takes anything off their plate, and this gave us an opportunity to do that, and I think that was a big deal. So we just kind of, when we talk about leadership in the pandemic, we made sure that piece was really important. The second piece that I think gave us probably the biggest momentum in comparison to people or other districts in our area was that we were really, really consistent in the message. And not only the message that we were delivering, but how we were delivering it and when we were delivering it. So we always, before making a decision to come back to school, we told people in May, we're going to meet every Thursday on Facebook Live. I'm going to come on for 45 minutes and just answer questions for 45 minutes. And of course, they're going to end up being the same questions, but that's okay, right? Yeah. For 45 minutes, and that's all it's all going to be, but it'll be every Thursday. And we're not going to make a final decision on what we're going to do until August 3rd. So when you ask me, what are you doing? I can tell you. August 3rd is the date. I will not tell you anything. I will not make a decision before that. But by August 3rd, you will know exactly what we are doing on September 1st when we come back to school. If we're remote, if we're hybrid, if we're whatever the case, you'll know on August 3rd. But it's May 10th right now. So there's a lot that's going to go on with this. And I'll keep answering these questions until August 3rd. And then on August 3rd, you'll have a decision. And then we'll go. So I think that gave us some really needed momentum in the area, because we were very clear, not only on the message, but how we delivered it. And when I say that, I think that was a really important piece. Every Thursday, 6 o'clock, it's 45 minutes. It's open. Just people there. then 100 people, then 75, then 25, right? They just kind of, they knew that when they came back, they were going to get the same answer, that we weren't wavering, that if they go to one person, they're not going to hear one thing. If they go to another person, they're going to hear another thing. So that was a really big thing, because when you don't have a connected message and vision, if you don't like the answer that I give you, you're going to go to somebody else. And that answer, if that's different, they're going to say, well, they don't even know what they're doing. They have no idea what's going on. So I can't get a straight answer from anybody. Yeah. So we just really streamlined to say, I rarely do the I'm in charge, listen to me, I've got the message mentality. I don't operate that way, except in this situation. In this situation, I said, I want all the information going through me, because that way we all know it's all, if people are going to get mad, they're going to get mad at me. And I want to make sure that that's the case, but I also want to make sure that we can control the narrative in terms of the work that we do.
That's good. That is good. Yeah. I mean, it's so important, because there were so many questions, and, you know, what else do people have to do but obsess about it? You know, it's a serious, important question. And I'm sure it was always on the top of the mind.
Every time.
So what's Fall Creek doing now? Are you fully open? Everything all right? Yeah.
Yeah, we've been fully open all year. Last year we were hybrid, like half the group came on Mondays and Wednesdays, half on Thursdays. I'm sorry, Mondays and Tuesdays, the other half on Thursday, Friday, and then Wednesday was a virtual day for everybody. And then this year we have been in school all day, every day with all kids. So, and you know, there was one part of the year where we were struggling to operate only because of subs. So that was the only time. You know, from a kid perspective and a number perspective, it wasn't awful, but it was the quarantine guidelines that people had to be in quarantine, and we just couldn't staff the building. But we made it through, and we continue to be okay. And our numbers have been, you know, real good recently.
Yeah. Pretty much the same at our school. Okay. And that personally surprised me. It wasn't something I anticipated, but when it's the teachers. Yeah. When you do have a teacher that, like you said, needs to quarantine and is out for 2 weeks, that gets a little complicated. But everyone pulled together, and now it's pretty well. We're dealing with individual cases here and there.
Okay. So, yeah, about the same.
It's good. Yeah, that's good. All righty.
Your best tip from your book?
Oh man, I don't know if the best tip from the book is, my favorite one is probably, my favorite one is recognize, acknowledge, extend. Without question, that's the one that's made the most impact on schools. And when I work with leaders across the country, that's the first thing that we talk about, is how do you recognize great work, acknowledge it, and extend it? Because there's a lot of people in schools that are working their tails off, and nobody knows what they do because they teach with 4 walls around them all the time. And if we can break those down a little bit, then there's a better chance for us to talk about great stories. So recognize, acknowledge, and extend is easily the one that I would say has the biggest impact so far.
Let's see. I'm going to look at my notes. And start and end your day with joy.
Yeah. So that's part of that whole mentality of the being able to recognize, being in the mindset to recognize. So when we say recognize the great work that's happening around you, we also have to realize that happens at our house too. And so if you don't put yourself in the right mindset to recognize greatness wherever you are, wherever you lean into, then you're not going to. Right? Like, so I put ourselves, when the way that I think about it is this: if you want to be present and engaged for the people that you serve, if that's at school or the people that you love at home, how are you making sure that you put yourself in the right mindset to do that? That's the whole recognition piece of it. So we talked to our staff about starting and ending your day with joy. And a lot of people go right to the joy in that, and which fine. They can. That's not a big deal. But it's not just about the joy. It's about starting and ending your day. Because if you never start and end your day at school, then you go home to the people that you care about the most, that give you the most latitude because they love you the most, and then they get the least of you because they love you the most and give you the most latitude. So how are you making sure that you put yourself in the right mindset to be present and engaged, not only for the people at work, but what are you doing at home? You know, during the pandemic, when I was starting our day here by reading stories and doing magic tricks for kids online, just on Facebook Live. And it was like a half hour. And I just told parents, hey, just go away. I don't need you right now. Just put your kids in front of this. You know, I'll read them a book. I'll do a magic trick. I got you. You go get some coffee, check your social media. I don't care. Go for a little walk. I don't care. Whatever you want to do, but just get away for me because you didn't ask for this. Right. So then I read a story. But then, so I started my day with joy. Hopefully it started other people's day with joy too, but it started my day with joy. But at the end of the day, I was making calls home to kids who had birthdays because I didn't get a chance to see them during the day. So I'd call kids who had birthdays on that day, just tell them I was thinking about them, just to tell them, hey, I just wanted to let you know, happy birthday and whatever. And that gave me some joy at the end of the day, but it also ended my day. I always said that right at 5 o'clock or 5:30 or whatever the day was done, before I walk out of this office, I'm going to make all those calls, and then I'm not going to touch school at all till the next morning. And that was a really big thing that I think I would hope that people would also take on.
Yeah, the start and end. Yeah, so many times I've worked, you know, you just work yourself to exhaustion at the end of the day, and then you have nothing left. You have nothing left for family
and then they suffer. Then your family suffers. Then you walk between two places where you don't know if you're valuable, or if you're valued, if you're valuable, or if you don't know if you're always looking at the mess in both spots.
Yeah.
Joe, want to be my teacher, please?
Yeah.
All right.
I'd love to. Love it.
Let's see. Though you've covered everything that I had in my notes.
Oh yeah.
Sandy, did you have anything else?
Yes, I think what I would like to end with. So I am studying to be a leader, and I'm also studying lots about VR.
Okay.
My intake is that VR is going to come into like the next generation, and how we're going to transform classroom teaching. What's your take of future education?
Well, I think the future of education is any kind of VR, any kind of AR, any kind of technology that goes into the classroom is, first of all, I believe it's truly important. But second piece is I believe it never can replace the opportunity of a great teacher in a classroom. I just don't. I think you can learn a lot, but at the same time, I think that the relationship that you build with an opportunity with a person in that room, or even from even a distance perspective, we could still create relationships. It's about people. It'll always be about people. So if it's just about content delivery, it's a different conversation, and I can get that from a book. The question becomes, how do we make sure that we're teaching the next generation to not only take in content and learn, which is important, but also how to make sure that we connect and grow. And that there's a huge difference in that, because when it comes down to if our world is simply about content regurgitation, we've missed the entire point of what we do. Because if the question can be Googled, they're going to Google it, right? So what do we do to make sure that we're creating connections and developing opportunities for people that, honestly, when it comes to VR, it could land in that area. We could be talking about how we develop, technologies that are going to help people in and out of schools with all kinds of different, platforms and opportunities. But it starts with a conversation with someone who's willing to build a relationship with the people who are in that space.
Fantastic. I'm going to be writing notes for that.
Hey, I just want to let you know, I tried the walk to work. Now, there's a little span from my bus to my school.
Okay.
And just last week, I thought, okay, I'm gonna see how to do it. Do you use a selfie stick? Or you
No.
just, of course, your arm is as long as a selfie stick, but my arm got tired, and
hang
then
on.
I got out
Let's see
of
if I can-
breath. I got out of breath.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, it does that. Hang on a sec. Yeah. So yeah, I get out of breath. Absolutely get out of breath. But I use this is a Pocket Osmo, and I just connect this to my phone, and it connects right to my phone, and I just hold it up like with my phone like that, and I just walk and kind of follows me, and it's a little bit. It just makes it a little bit more stable. I figured if I was gonna do these things all the time, that my head shaking up and down probably wasn't the way to go. And just as importantly, there's a bunch of snow on the ground here almost every time I do this thing. And it's either me getting out and shoveling or just making sure it's a little bit more stable so I don't slip on the
So
ice.
you don't slip. Have you ever fallen?
Oh, yeah, twice.
Oh.
Went down hard.
Oh.
But then I had to go redo it. I rarely redo them. But I'm not going to fall over and have people laughing at I kind of missed the point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. It's another way of saying, hey, leaders also get back
humanity.
Yeah, fall down and break their head is what they do. That's what happens. Like, yeah, I'm sitting here bleeding, but go Crickets, right? Like, that's not going to happen.
No. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you very much for coming to chat with us. Sandy, you gonna take us out?
Yes. Well, Joe, you know what? It's been a pleasure having you on the show with both Karen and myself. We are honored that you've shared your experiences with us. Thank you to all our listeners out there. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at chatwsk1 or check out past episodes of the podcast at on our website, which we'll put on our description. Mm-hmm. You can find us and subscribe to our channel on Spotify, Google, and Apple to hear more about what is going on in education. I was going to say on both sides of the ponds, but both Karen and I are here. But Joe, you are on the other side of the pond.
I am.
We would so much like to have you back on our show again to share more experiences with us. They've been invaluable here.
And anytime you call, you reach out, we'll make it happen. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Go Crickets.
Bye-bye.
Bye.